For the past few months, I've been transforming my character designs into Pop Mart style art toys, and now it's finally time to make trinkets. Let's see if we can transform my most complicated character design into a Pop Mart style art toy. With over 20 keychains stacked on top of her head, transforming trinkets into a Pop Mart style art toy is bound to be complicated. So, to keep myself on track, I'm going to create a project plan using Milanote, who have very kindly sponsored this video. If you've never heard of it before, Milanote is an easy-to-use tool for organising your projects and plans into visual boards. Milanote is perfect for visual learners and creatives like myself, as their flexible drag-and-drop interface lets you arrange things in whatever way makes sense for your project. Let's put together a quick landing page for today's Trinkets POP MART project. I like to start things off by arranging various images, notes, and arrows into place. Then, after editing their colours to make everything look nice and pretty, we can insert some Milanote board elements. This to-do list will be perfect for keeping track of my progress, and since we'll need to make a few extra plans within this board, I'm going to house them all inside of this column. Not only is it fun to create project plans like this one, but I've also found Milanote to be an extremely useful tool. After inserting a quick project materials list, we can now use one of these empty boards to create a super inspiring trinkets themed mood board. And I've already scoured the internet for various trinket images, so let's insert them into this empty board. Adding images into a Milanote board is super easy. You can either copy and paste them or upload them using the Add Image button. Then you can crop and rotate the images if need be. I want this board to look like a messy scrapbook, so I'm placing the images on and around one another. Not only does this layering technique look cute, but it also reflects the chaotic array of trinkets within my original illustration. Imagine you're looking into a bag full of keychains. That is what I want this trinkets mood board to look like. Okay, this is looking really cute so far, but something is missing. How about we add some notes, prompts, and colour swatches to really tie everything together? Also, this audio element will allow us to insert a song into the board. I've chosen one of my favourite lamp songs as I feel like it perfectly encapsulates the feeling I get when looking at all of these images. Okay, our Trinkets mood board is now complete, so it's finally time to design our very own Trinkets Pop Mart style art toy. Let's jump into Procreate and get drawing. First things first, we need to work out her pose. I can already tell that Trinkets is going to be fairly top heavy, so a pose similar to the one that we used for tulip bantu knots should work nicely. The more surface touch points we have, the better. We don't want her toppling over. Right, I am really liking this so far, but before we begin to add any details, I want to give you a super quick disclaimer. As much as I would love to perfectly match every single trinket seen within my original illustration, that would be too much of a challenge for this particular project. So I have decided that I'm going to simplify, alter, and/or remove some of the trinkets. She will have the majority of them, but some of them are just too complex to be made at such a small size. It could be cool to loosely theme this art toys outfit around 2010's scene kid culture, adding details like Converse, bracelets, and heavy makeup. Plus, a bright outfit like this will allow us to match colours from her head of trinkets. Right, this Trinkets Pop Mart style art toy design is looking great, so let's insert it into a new Milanote board and create an initial toy design page. I've decided to utilise one of Milanote's many board templates for this, as it will allow us to insert images, elements, and notes into its predetermined layout with ease. These templates are perfect for those looking to quickly input information rather than design an entire board. Okay, let's add some annotations. Like I mentioned just a moment ago, this Trinkets Pop Mart style art toy design is inspired by 2010's scene kid fashion. Not only does her large, rounded keychain hairstyle reflect this, but the bright colours and patterns within her outfit is also very true to scene kid fashion. And alongside her scene aesthetic, I've decided to give her a grouchy expression. I like to imagine that this star keychain has fallen out of place, ruining her once perfect hairstyle. These colours may seem obvious, but when it comes to painting them later on, it'll be easy to lose track of specific shades. So these swatches should help me to gather the correct paints later. Last but not least, let's insert a few extra notes and lists about the keychains themselves. Since I will be using filament to 3D print this art toy, any overhanging keychains or intricate details may be affected by supports or gravity. Therefore, keeping the shape simple is key. I can always go back in later with some epoxy clay to hand sculpt things onto the design. Right, I am now ready to transform this Trinkets Pop Mart style art toy into a 3D model, so let's jump into Nomad Sculpt on my iPad and get to work. After importing the same base head and body that I use for all of my Pop Mart style art toys, I'm using the tube tool to draw on each of Trinkets' limbs. When using the tube tool to create limbs like this, it's important to turn the B-spline button on. This button adds an automatic curve to any adjustments that you make, preventing sharp creases along the surface of the tubes. Now, after using spheres to form Trinkets' shoulders and hands, I'm going to correct her pose to match the one seen within my initial toy design. To create Trinkets' tool converse, I'm merging a cylinder and a half sphere together. Then, after splitting the sole and increasing its size, I'm cloning this shape and putting it onto the other foot. When it comes to adding clothing to my Pop Mart style art toys, I like to keep things fairly simple. Not only does carving the clothing into the 3D model create an easy to follow painting guide, but it also adds some nice depth. We don't want our outfit to look flat. Okay, this pose is looking great, but we are far from finished as she is still missing her huge keychain hairstyle, and I can already tell that this is going to be a real challenge to create. So let's work smarter instead of harder and draw up a 3D trinket plan inside of my third and final Milanote board. The easiest way to create a plan like this is to import turnaround images of the head into my Milanote board and then use this pen tool to draw each trinket into place. Also, I've switched over to the Milanote app on my iPad for this, as it feels much more natural to draw with my Apple Pencil, almost like jotting ideas down into a notebook. Plus, having the Milanote app downloaded onto my devices allows me to take my boards with me wherever I go. Okay, let's speed things up and sketch on the rest of the keychain layout, taking extra care to simplify their shapes. Using basic shapes such as spheres, cubes, and cylinders to form the majority of the keychains will make the printing process much easier. Now, this plan looks great already, but to make it a bit neater, I've decided to insert some extra notes, arrows, and images. Also, a picture of my Trinkets resin sculpture will be especially useful. Feel free to check out that video here to see how I made that. Right, let's get back to work and create this Trinkets Pop Mart style art toy. After using the mask tool to extrude Trinkets' eyes and eyebrows, I've gone ahead and put all of the simplified keychains into place. And whilst this process did take much longer than I anticipated it to, the 3D trinket plan that we made on Milanote was extremely helpful. Now all that's left to do is put Trinkets' head onto her body and print everything out. Roughly 4 hours later, my Trinkets Pop Mart style art toy has fully printed and can be removed from the print bed, but there is a slight problem. I'm not really sure what happened during the printing process, but Domo has a nasty head wound, so we'll need to patch this up using some Milliput epoxy putty. After thoroughly mixing part A and part B together, we can now use this Milliput to patch up Domo's head, squish it into any surface defects, and use it to create extra details like ears and limbs. A few hours later, the Milliput has fully cured, so I'm temporarily removing these ears and limbs to make the sanding process easier. We really want the surface of this Trinkets Pop Mart style art toy to be nice and smooth before we prime it, so taking the time to sand everything is very important. Right, now that she is looking adequately dusty, we can rinse her off, use some super glue to reattach the smaller Milliput details, spray her with some filler primer, and then coat her in some brush-on primer to even everything out. This is my first time using a brush-on primer and I am very impressed. It only took a couple of coats to achieve a clean, even finish ready for painting. Speaking of which, let's do just that and start painting. First things first, let's airbrush Trinket's skin tone using a flesh-toned model paint that has been thinned down with airbrush airbrush thinner. This is now my go-to method for achieving a perfectly even base layer. You really cannot achieve this level of smoothness with a paintbrush. My only problem is I don't have an airbrush booth, so if you have any suggestions, please leave them in the comments below. Okay, looking good, let's get to work on painting the body. To fill in both the crop tops and the shorts, I'm using liquid model paints mixed with slow dry fluid. Not only does mixing slow dry fluid into my paints prevent clumping when adding thin layers, but it also helps to make the paint spread further. Let's get to work on Trinket's shoes using some Artex acrylic marker pens. After using the white marker to fill in the toe caps, soles, and heel patches, I'm now using a hot pink to fill in the rest of the shoe. Then, once dry, we can use the same white marker pen to draw on the laces. This is so much faster than using liquid model paints. Let's move on to the star, which is front and center on Trinket's grey crop top. I chose to put a star here as it should nicely complement the star that covers her eye. Now, all that's left to do is to draw on her band-aids and bracelets using various marker colours, and Trinket's body is complete. Let's move on to her head. Before we get to work on this mountain of trinkets, I'm going to fill in the whites of her eyes using the same white marker pen that I used for the shoes. Now, let's use some black model paint to colour in Trinket's hair, and believe it or not, Trinkets does actually have some underneath all of these keychains. It is fairly hard to see in my original illustration, but it is there. See? Right, it's now time to tackle these trinkets. I think the best course of action will be to colour them all in first, like a paint by numbers project. Then, once painted, we can go back in later to add finer details. I'm going to use a mixture of both acrylic markers and liquid model paints to fill them in, as some of the keychains have very precise colours. Also, despite making a 3D trinket plan earlier on, it's now time to figure out what colours the keychains on the back of her head will be. I don't really have a plan for these, I'm simply avoiding using the same colours next to each other. Okay, now that the base colours have been added, it's time to bring this Trinkets Pop Mart style art toy to life by painting in the details. After filling in her iris with a blue acrylic marker and lowering her scalp in the back, I'm now using a black acrylic marker to colour in her eyes and eyebrows, taking care to not smudge any paint onto the skin. Now I'm going to use a combination of this ultra fine point Sharpie and more acrylic markers to add details to the keychains, starting with the sad bear at the front. I've chosen to use a Sharpie as it's the perfect width for the line details. Trying to paint all of these with a thick marker or a paintbrush would be more hassle than it's worth. Whilst I paint these details, I want to take a very quick moment to thank all of you. My YouTube channel recently surpassed 100,000 subscribers, and I couldn't have done it without you. You've more than likely heard me say this already, but my New Year's resolution for 2025 was to hit 10k, so I'm pretty overwhelmed by this achievement. Again, I really cannot thank you all enough. Right, all of the smaller details have now been painted onto the keychains, but we're not done just yet, as there are various extra pieces that we need to make, like the yellow creature, the star, the blue character's antennas, the bubble tea straw, and some extra loops and chains. To make these, I'm going to use white Fimo, a modelling clay that hardens once it's baked in the oven. Let's pop this tray of Fimo details into the oven for 15 minutes and allow them to cool. And then, once fully hardened, we can paint and attach these clay pieces onto Trinket's head. As you can see within my original illustration, there are various chains and loops across Trinket's head, and although I'm not going for perfect accuracy, it would be a shame to not include some metallic hardware within this design. So, for the ball chains, I've 3D printed various strips of plastic, which can then be painted silver using an acrylic marker pen. Intertwining these fake chains amongst real metal jump rings that I've salvaged from old keychains should look great. I'm also repurposing some coated paper clips into various loop details. Attaching these in between the keychains should help to sell the messy bundle of trinkets effect that I'm going for. Okay, this Trinkets Pop Mart style art toy is almost complete. All that's left to do is using dotting tool to paint on her grouchy expression, place her head onto her body, and see how it has turned out. And here she is! This Trinkets Pop Mart style art toy is now complete. This has been a very long and complicated process, but it was well worth it. I'm especially happy with how her keychain hairstyle has come out. Despite it not being 100% accurate to my original illustration, you can still tell who it is. Plus, the way that her outfit complements her overall style looks great. She's a fantastic addition to my growing collection of Pop Mart style art toys. If you're interested in starting a project like this one, then I highly recommend that you check out Milanote. Milanote is available for free with no time limit, so sign up for a free Milanote account using the link in the description. A big thank you to Milanote for sponsoring this video, and a huge thank you to you guys for watching until the end. I will see you in the next video.